Good evening. I would like to call the Mayfield Heights City Council meeting of May 22nd, 2017 to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. DeJohn?
Here.
Mrs. Finney?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Teresi? Mr. Mercurio?
Here. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. I'd also like to recognize in our audience tonight our department heads, Chief Bittner, Chief Elliott, Sean Ward, Joe Fernaro, Tom Jameson, as well as our engineer, Dan Gerson. First on tonight's agenda is a special presentation. So this is a special presentation for the Citizens Academy for teenage students. So Corporal Woods, Chief Bittner, and Lieutenant Leonard, if you want to step up to the podium.
Typically we have we have a whole day event, then we have the graduation at the end, and we were going to do it on a neighborhood watch, which was 2 days later. We didn't have enough time to get everything together, so we thought it might be a nice treat to do it at the council meeting and get some recognition for our outstanding teenage students that attended our academy. It's similar to our Citizens Academy, which we run every fall for adults. Last year we started it, it's a second class. The kids come in and have 4 blocks, 8 hours of training. It's similar to the exact same thing the adults go through. They see what police do, they see how investigators work, they learn how to collect evidence, they learn how to run radar, make traffic stops, they see what our SWAT team and negotiators and bomb unit does, and they really get a good 8 hours of packed information, and I think it's very entertaining for them as well. So without any further ado, I'll have Mayor, if you'd like to step out as well to help congratulate them as they come up. Lieutenant Leonard and Corporal Woods were paramount in putting together the program and running the program, and they have the they have one award that they're going to give away, as well as the certificates for the teenagers that came in tonight.
Right. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the parents and stuff for having your kids come for the program. It's our second year of running our CATS Academy. CATS Academy is our CATS Academy stands for Citizens Academy for Teenage Students. So just having you guys here and letting your kids come to this program and spending the day with us, we really appreciate it, so thank you. So, what do you want? All right, first graduate is Nick Zanella. They ran an airsoft range, so they actually got to shoot out some airsoft guns, so it's targets in there, and it's a copy of all the pictures and stuff we took, about 250 pictures. Next up is Benjamin Atina. Next is Jacob Loprich. Come on up, Jacob. And our last student here is Robert Kramer. we had, there was actually 3 more students that went through it. They couldn't attend. They were supposed to be here. One of the students that was here won our Top Shot Award, which is our trophy for the best shot at our range. So we'll make sure that they get that. Just to announce them, I'm sorry? Our airsoft guns, yes, they were toys. But just to get them on the record, our other graduates was Scott Aldridge Jr., Aaron Barkley, and Kyle Silbernagel. So.
Congratulations, everyone. That really is a real nice program. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2017-30. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution number 2017-30, a resolution commending firefighter paramedic George DeRicco III upon his retirement from the Fire Department of the City of Mayfield Heights, Ohio. First reading.
Do I have a motion to suspend the rules? Approved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the suspension.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Approved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. Mayor?
Thank you. This resolution, as was introduced by our law director, is also introduced by myself and all members of council, and this is a resolution commending firefighter paramedic George DeRicco III upon his retirement from the Fire Department of the City of Mayfield Heights. Now, unfortunately, George couldn't be here with us this evening. He had a little emergency come up, so we wish him all the best, but we do want to make sure that we get this resolution read into our record for George, and we'll get it to him sometime later. So whereas George DeRicco has served with distinction with the City of Mayfield Heights for a period of over 29 years, excuse me, with the highest degree of devotion, humility, loyalty, and perseverance. And whereas George started his employment as a firefighter paramedic in the fire department on November 30th, 1987. And whereas he was one of the first firefighters to start the basic aid training in the schools, served as a certified fire safety inspector and child car seat technician. And whereas his valuable communication skills assisted the department in writing grants, as well as the preparation of articles for various publications. And whereas George's efforts and a sense of responsibility have given our city the finest in fire protection and emergency medical services, for which we are grateful and proud. And whereas George has chosen to retire as of February 25th, 2017, taking with him our heartfelt thanks for a job well done. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Mayfield Heights, State of Ohio, that the administration, the City Council, and the residents of Mayfield Heights extend their congratulations to George DeRicco III on his retirement from the Mayfield Heights Fire Department, and wish to express their deepest appreciation to George for his years of devoted service and sincerely wish him a happy, healthy, and successful future. Passed today, May 22nd, 2017, attested by Clerk Tribby and Council President Pro Tem Mercurio and myself. Congratulations, George. You will be missed. You're a heck of a guy, and we wish you the best.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm sure we all echo those we all echo those sentiments. Next, we have David Turner here from First Energy, who would like to present to us. So if you want to step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, members of council. I'm David Turner, the External Affairs Manager for First Energy. My address, 4295 East 146th Street, that's Cleveland, Ohio, our service center. And I wanted to come out tonight because, one, introduce myself to all members of council. I've been in the job about a year and a half, and I've not met all members, but I work very closely with Joe Bernaro. I have a great relationship with him. I've met the mayor on a few occasions. As you know, if you don't know, our foundation has been a regular contributor to one of your largest events that you hold every summer. And I've never met council, but I wanted to drop off the check for Mr. Ward and give him a picture with a fake check as well. So with that being said, our foundation believes in the sustainability and the vitality of our communities. Mayfield Heights is one of those communities, so we're proud to support your annual event. So thanks, Mr. Ward. Mayor, want to take a picture with us? Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Turner, and to First Energy as well. We really appreciate that. Next on our agenda is the approval of the Mayfield Heights Council meeting minutes of May 8th, 2017. May I have a motion to suspend the reading of those minutes and to approve as written? Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any changes, corrections, or deletions? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain. I was absent from the
Okay,
meeting.
Mrs. Snyder abstains. Opposed, nay. Okay, those meeting minutes have been approved. Next on tonight's agenda is correspondence and announcements. Do any members of council have any correspondence or announcements? Mrs. Sabata?
Thank you. The Chagrin River Watershed Partnership had their meeting on May 18th, and it was an officer of corporation election. So I would like to congratulate William Tomko, the Village of Chagrin Falls, as president, Mary Samide from Munson Township as vice president, Kathy McCulley from Orange Village, treasurer, and Christopher Horn from Bainbridge Townbridge, secretary. Thank you.
Do I have any other correspondence or announcements? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to reports of officers, starting with the mayor.
Thank you and good evening. On May 9th, I had the pleasure of speaking to the Landers School third graders. Any chance I get to speak to the Landers students, I try my hardest to take advantage of it. It's really great to spend some time with such intelligent and well-behaved students. They did ask some really good questions, as always, about our government and about our city. And my favorite question, I think, this year was, do you know the president? I had to admit I didn't, but I said, I'm working on it, man. You never know. So it's always a great time there. The kids are awesome. On May 10th, Service Director Finaro, Assistant Service Director Fatika, Nick Police, Lorna Zeller and myself attended the Tree City USA Award Ceremony in Solon. The city is now officially a Tree City USA member. This has been something Joe and his department have been working on for years. You will notice that we are now flying the Tree City USA flag at City Hall. And Joe's in the process of setting up our tree board and looking for volunteers. So if anyone is interested, get a hold of Joe. On Thursday, May 18th, I had the pleasure of swearing in the police department's newest sergeant, William Dvorak. Bill has been on the force for 21 years, so if you see him around, congratulate him. And finally, please keep Lisa Benedetti and her family in your prayers. Lisa's father, Alio, passed away. Al was a World War II vet and a true gentleman. Always a pleasure to be around, so just keep them in your prayers. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Moving on, Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for the Law Director? Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
I have no report either.
Any questions for Mr. Tribby? Okay, we'll now move on to reports of committees, commissions, or boards. If your committee, commission, or board has met, please report on that meeting, and we'll start with the Building Committee, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you. I did meet with Mayor DeSico, Mr. Murphy, and Mr. Jameson to discuss my proposed pod and temporary container legislation. Mr. Jameson is going to add this legislation to different parts of our code and to compare it to other cities. Once that's completed, we'll have another building committee meeting, and we will bring back a recommendation to this council. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Finance and Audit, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you. Finance and Audit did not meet, so therefore I have no report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Okay, Legislative Committee, Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you. The Legislative Committee met to discuss Ordinance 2017-12 pertaining to enacting indigent descendant policy. All members of council should have received the minutes and the additional handouts from the meeting. It was recommended that Mr. Murphy further review and make additional changes to the proposed ordinance. The committee will meet again to discuss the changes and additions before we recommend it to council. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Snyder? Okay, moving on, Public Works and Services. I do have a report tonight. The Service Department will have its first open house on May 27th during the hours of 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. to mark the end of National Public Works Week. This will be an opportunity for everyone to stop by the department and get to know the staff and see all the equipment and receive any additional information about Public Works. They will have some light snacks and refreshments there. Service Department would also like to thank ODOT for making repairs and cleaning culverts that ran along 271 from Marsall to Mayfield. This work will help improve stormwater runoff and reduce flooding on Marsall underneath the bridge. The department also assisted ODOT with the hauling away of some of the extra material there. Service Department also planted some shrubs and fixed the fence and hydroseeded the lots on that we own on Woodhurst. We received a few calls about the Bonnie Lane lot, and they will make a few upgrades to that lot within the next few weeks. Both the swimming pools are up and running, and they still have some minor work to do before opening day on June 1, 2017, but that should all be done in time. Mulching and cleanup around the City Hall has started for Memorial Day services. We'll start hanging flags, installing hanging baskets, and plant flowers all around town. And finally, the waterfall on Mayfield Road is up and running, and the flowers will be planted within the next few weeks. And that completes my report. Does anyone have any questions?
I just want
Finney.
to comment again, Mr. Finaro. Mayfield Road looks fabulous. You guys are doing a really good job.
Thank you, Mrs. Finney. Next, we'll move on to Parks and Recreation. Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayfield Heights Recreation, the last day to buy early bird prices for the Dragon Pool passes is this coming Friday, May 26th. Stop by the Recreation office between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. all week with your current gas electric bill to receive the resident rate. Dragon Pool opens on June 1st, and session number 1 of swim lessons begins on June 5th. School is out this week. Are you still looking for something for your child to do? We have several week-long camps available throughout the summer, including tennis camp, science camp for kids in 5th to 8th grade, and cheer camp. And for those incorrigibles, Mr. Ward told me we're gonna have a boot camp. Sports camps run by Mayfield varsity coaches include Mayfield Speed, Power, and Agility Camp, Fundamental Basketball Camp, Lady Wildcat Basketball Skill Camp, Stroke Clinic for Competitive Swimming, Summer Volleyball Camp, and Wildcat Football Camp. For full details, visit the website or call the Recreation Department at 440-442-2627. Memorial Day service this Monday, May 29th at 10 a.m. at the Roll of Honor Memorial. Rain location is in the fire bays. Join us as we remember and pay tribute to those who served our country. Guest speaker is Andrew Bregman. Our first movie in the park will be Friday, June 9th at City Park. Join us with your blanket or chairs at dusk for Zootopia. Calling on all active older adults. Looking for a fun pastime this summer? Mayfield Heights Recreation Department would love to have you join our programs. We have Silver Shooter Bocce Wednesdays, June 14th through August 2nd, 11:15 a.m. The cost is $32. Bocce ball really knows no age limit. It can be played and enjoyed by any age. Played under our beautiful pavilion. A simple lunch will be provided after the game. For more information on any of this, visit the website or go through your activity guide or call the Recreation Department. Park and Recreations will be holding a meeting tomorrow night in these chambers, and that's open to the public. That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mano. Any questions for Mr. Mano? Okay, we'll now move on to Safety and Transportation. Mrs. Finney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no report.
Thank you, Mrs. Finney. Any questions for Mrs. Finney? Okay, we'll next move on to Board of Zoning and Appeals. We do have 2 items on tonight's agenda that we can address as they come up. Any questions? Okay, next we'll move on to Planning Commission. Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Planning Commission did meet last Monday night to discuss the lot split and the preliminary site plan for the proposed Chase Bank to be located in front of Eastgate in the southwest corner. The request for the lot split was so the bank can have their own monument sign. We did table that request because we wanted to wait for the preliminary and final site plan approvals by the Planning Commission and this body, should that happen. The fire department, just as a side note, the fire department and TMS engineers, all their issues have been addressed by the applicant. We can talk more about this when it comes up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Okay, next we'll move on to comments from the public. If you are also on the agenda tonight as a result of a BZA or Planning Commission item and wish to be heard or give the council a presentation, this is the portion of the meeting to do so. According to our codified ordinances, each speaker will have 5 minutes each to address the council. For items requiring additional time, I may entertain a motion from council to extend that time. 30 minutes is the total time allotted for the public portion, which may also be extended. Please keep in mind that this is not a time of question and answers nor a time for public debate with the council. Please raise your hand, be recognized by the chair, approach the podium, and state your name and personal or business address for the record. The time is now 7:29, and I will open up the public portion. Would anyone like to be heard? Mr. Eisberg.
resolution before this body.
Please state your name and address for
Oh,
the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please.
Richard Eisenberg, business address 1413 Golden Gate Boulevard, Mayfield Heights.
Thank you.
I noticed this resolution. It was my understanding that the appeal that was made was not rejected. It appears that from the minutes or from the agenda that the appeal was denied, and I'm not quite sure why this is happening. For those who give you the backstory, Ms. Helms has lived in Mayfield Heights at her Edgewood address for over 40 years. Unfortunately, last year her home burned down. After some evaluation, the insurance company determined that the house was beyond repair, should be demolished and replaced. And I'm condensing because this takes some time with these insurance companies. Since then, there's been essentially this burned out hulk on Edgewood, and I understand some of the neighbors have expressed concern. I'm surprised that not all of the neighbors have not expressed concern. Ms. Helms has engaged a contractor to tear down, haul away the debris, and build a new home. For whatever reason, in the letter which we received from the city, the building department, stated that the whole property was condemned, and of course, if you read the ordinance, the house falls into every one of the categories. It's a nuisance, it's a hazard, it's against anything safe. But included in this same letter, in this same preliminary condemnation, was the garage. This garage has stood there since the house was built, and if you look at the commentary with the pictures, it has been frequently rebuilt and reinforced. Perfectly good garage. So you had, one day you had a perfectly fine house that needed some painting, perfectly fine garage that again needed probably some cosmetic work this summer, very serviceable. The next day you had a burned out house. So we're still not sure, and that's why we had filed the original appeal with BZA under that particular ordinance, why the garage has anything to do with this matter whatsoever. If the house is restored, I think the neighborhood will look better. There'll be a new house on Edgewood. Same garage that was always there will be there. It's comparable to all the other garages up and down the street. And the book, so to speak, or the problem here is that if, for whatever reason, the city says, no, you have to have a new garage, and the building commissioner said, well, I guess if he were building the garage today, he would do certain things with the foundation, and it's withstood every heavy snow, every high wind. As Ms. Helms has indicated, it's sheltered quite a bit of her belongings. She has a vintage automobile in there. I just don't feel that this makes any sense, and I would ask that the BZA denial of the appeal be overturned, that let her go forth. Just let the builder, I would say that the builder did present plans or seek the permit for demolition. That was denied, again, tied in with the garage. If I lived in the neighborhood, I don't know that I would be very happy, because it just makes no sense to tie in the garage and make the garage part of reconstructing the house. So I'd ask this body to look at the thing and just say, fine, we're going to overturn the denial, and we're going to grant the appeal, and we're going to let her go forward, and we'll live another 40 years with the garage. Thank you.
Mr. Eisenberg, I think you misread the legislation. The determination of the building department was to tear down the garage and the house, okay? When it went to the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Zoning Appeals affirmed the decision to tear down the house. So the house should be torn down unless you take a further appeal. But at that same meeting, the Board of Zoning Appeals determined not to take any action on your client's appeal of the garage because you had failed to submit sufficient evidence that the house, or that the garage should not be turned down, and the city did not submit sufficient evidence that it should be torn down. So therefore, the board took no action on that pending further submission of evidence as to whether or not the garage should be torn down. So right now, the only thing before council is affirming the decision of the building department that the house should be torn down.
That was my understanding, but the way I read the agenda, it looked like the appeal had been denied.
The appeal has been denied.
Well then,
Well, then, all
well
right.
then, but
Follow
the
me.
appeal's been denied.
No, listen. The building department determined the house should be torn down. Your client, let me finish. Your client appealed that.
No, we appealed the whole letter because it was a combined condemnation.
Okay.
It was all locked
The
together.
residence the Board of Zoning Appeals has recommended the residence be torn down, and in that regard, her appeal is denied. But it took no action on the garage. The garage does not have to be torn down at this point. That will be determined at a later date upon the submission of additional evidence. That's what's before council.
Okay, and just for the record, I have no idea why the homeowner should have to submit any evidence whatsoever for a perfectly sound structure. This is the condemning authority. If the city wants to condemn the garage, then the city should bring in proof that it should be condemned according to the ordinance.
Maybe it will.
Okay.
But the garage does not have to be torn down as part of this legislation.
Okay, so okay, now I understand. The
Okay.
the language
Questions?
The language was rather confusing, so we got, in effect, the BZA bifurcated the appeal.
Yes.
Uh,
That's an excellent way to put it.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, then I think,
So one appeal was denied, and one appeal has been held in abeyance, and that's the way the legislation reads.
okay, because, again, and not belabor the point, the letter did not make a separation. The letter was a combined condemnation of the whole property, and then, as I just said, apparently the BZA decided to bifurcate the appeal and to put the thing into letter. So now, right now, the contractor can tear down the house. If,
Once council acts,
right,
yes.
Okay.
Because right now, conceivably, council could grant your client's appeal and not tear down the house.
okay.
Okay? But just to clarify, the legislation provides that the Board of Zoning Appeals determine to hold in abeyance a decision on the appeal regarding the garage, pending the presentation of additional evidence. Whether that comes from the city or the property owner, there will be additional evidence necessary at some point.
Okay,
So,
and again,
that's down the road.
again, we're still a bit confused as to why the garage has come into play at all. To use a layman's term, I would think that the garage would have been grandfathered in because it was totally unaffected by the fire.
Evelyn Helms, 5978 Edgewood Road, Mayfield Heights. I do not understand because I received a letter, which apparently Mr. Eisenberg did not receive, that said that the BZA had approved our request to take down the house, which is actually what we were asking for. Please let us demolish the house. I am basically homeless right now.
I haven't seen the letter. I haven't seen the letter either, but the order to you from the building department was to tear the house down.
Which is what we want.
Okay, but you appealed that to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
We
Yes, you
not
did.
appeal that. We appealed the connection of the garage with the order to tear
And that's
down
been
the
taken
house.
care of.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Helms.
Good evening, Paula Vocilla with Cosmo Eastgate Management on behalf of Eastgate Shopping Center. Address is 30201 Aurora Road. Good evening, it's a privilege to be here tonight by myself. We're here tonight to discuss the development of an out parcel for Chase Bank. We have the opportunity to further develop the shopping center and add a little bit more diverse tenant mix. We currently don't have a bank, so I think it would be a nice addition to the retail and restaurant component. We've worked with Chase Bank and their architect to determine the best traffic flow and to minimize any visibility issues to the existing tenants. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard? Okay, the time is now 7:39 and I will close the public portion. Next on our agenda are resolutions. First is resolution 2017-31. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution number 2017-31, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in denying to Lakes Venture LLC on behalf of Fresh Time Farmers Market, 1545 Golden Gate Plaza, a variance to conduct outside sales, display of merchandise in front of the store. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-31-001. First reading.
Do I have a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the suspension.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mano? Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
And Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Approved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mr. DeJohn. Discussion. Council was copied on the BZA meeting minutes. This was a unanimous denial by the BZA. The applicant requested outdoor sales, just like they have it evidently at their other locations. And the BZA was operating on a standard of practical difficulty, and we did not feel that prohibiting outdoor sales would hinder their sales in any way. And there were some other concerns that it may block sidewalks and interfere with pedestrian traffic throughout that plaza. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano? Yes. Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. By a count of 6-0, that resolution has been approved. Next is resolution 2017-32. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask that this resolution be read in its entirety?
Okay. Right.
Resolution number 2017-32. A resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in denying the appeal of Madeline Helms from the determination of the Building Department that the residence located at 5978 Edgewood Road was fire damaged and required demolition. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-12-087. Whereas Madeline Helms, 5978 Edgewood Road, appealed to the Board of Zoning Appeals from the determination of the Building Department that the residence located at 5978 Edgewood Road was fire damaged and required demolition. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-12-087. And whereas the Board of Zoning Appeals heard the appeal at its meeting of May 9, 2017, And whereas at that meeting, the Board of Zoning Appeals determined the order of the building department was appropriate. And whereas the council of this municipality concurs that the issuance of the demolition order was appropriate and was in the best interest of the public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare. And whereas at that same meeting, the Board of Zoning Appeals determined to hold in abeyance a decision on the appeal regarding the detached garage, pending the presentation of additional evidence as to the structural integrity of the garage. And whereas the council of this municipality concurs that the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals to hold in abeyance was appropriate, and pending the submission of additional evidence is in the best interest of the public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare. And whereas notice of the public hearing on the appeal has been given according to law, and a full public hearing has been had pursuant to such notice as prescribed by law. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Mayfield Heights, State of Ohio, that Section 1, the Council of the City of Mayfield Heights hereby confirms the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the city, reached at its meeting on May 9, 2017, in denying the appeal of Madeline Helms from the determination of the building department that the residence located at 5978 Edgewood Road was fire damaged and required demolition. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-12-087, and such confirmation is a final order in accordance with Chapter 2506 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 2. This council hereby directs the building department to provide further evidence to the Board of Zoning Appeals as to the structural integrity of the detached garage. Section 3. This council directs the Board of Zoning Appeals to continue the hearing on that portion of this appeal on such time, until such time as such evidence is provided. Section 4, the council finds and determines that all formal actions of this council relating to the adoption of this resolution have been taken at open meetings of this council, and that deliberations of this council and of its committees resulting in such formal action took place in meetings open to the public in compliance with all statutory requirements, including the requirements of Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 5. This resolution shall be in full force and effect at the earliest time allowed by law. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules? Approved by Mrs. Snyder, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the suspension.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Approved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mrs. Finney. Discussion, just to kind of dovetail on what the law director had said. An order of demolition for the house and the garage was issued by the building department. The house was damaged by fire, and everyone was in agreement that the house needs to be demolished. The question is whether or not the garage is structurally sound. I believe Mr. Jameson was unable to assess the condition of the garage as it was full at the time, and he did ask the applicant to have someone submit a report noting that noting the structural integrity of the garage, which I believe he has not received. An agreement was made to move forward with the demolition of the house, and that the city will work with the applicant to determine the structural integrity of the garage, and we'll go ahead and move forward from there. Any questions? Okay, I do have one question, I guess for Mr. Eisenberg. Has a permit been filed for the demolition yet, or when will that be filed? Do you want to step up to the podium, please?
As we did relate, of course, most of you were not at the BZA meeting, this whole thing sort of evolved when Mr. Barr inquired about obtaining a demolition permit and was told you can't have a demolition permit unless you're also demolishing the garage. Probably first thing tomorrow morning, the depending on the outcome of this vote, I will probably call Mr. Barnes and go get the demolition permit.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJean?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. By a count of 6-0, this resolution has been approved. Next is resolution number 2017-33. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution number 2017-33, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding on behalf of the city with the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules? Approved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the suspension.
Mr. DeJean?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Approved by Mr. DeJean, second by Mrs. Snyder. Discussion. Council was copied on a memo from Mr. Tribby. This is the 10th year that the city has engaged with the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District in order to provide assistance in implementing soil and water conservation measures. The fee will remain unchanged at $10,000, which will be paid quarterly. Mayor or Mr. Tribby, anything to add?
Only that the funds were appropriated in our budget that was passed back in March. And they sent the request for the MOU just last week, so the money was put aside for this purpose already.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJean?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes. By a count of 6-0, that resolution has been approved. We have no ordinances on tonight's agenda, so we will go ahead and move on to motions. Mr. Murphy, would you please read the first motion?
Yes, sir. Motion to confirm the decision of the Planning Commission approving a preliminary site plan for a new bank building at 1458 Som Center Road, Eastgate Shopping Center.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve? Approved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mr. DeJean. Discussion. Council was copied on the Planning Commission meeting minutes. This was a unanimous approval by the commission, and we did hear from the applicant earlier this evening. This is for the approval of the preliminary site plan. Mr. DeJean, anything to add?
Nothing.
Any questions? Okay, we have a motion on the table. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion has been approved. Mr. Murphy, would you please read the second motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion to modify the decision of the Planning Commission made on August 5, 2015, denying a request for a 4-foot 6-inch by 28-inch directional sign, including the building address 1413 at the rear access drive for Sharona Properties, LLC, at 1413 Golden Gate Boulevard, to allow the directional sign requested by Sharona, with or without the building address, not to exceed 6 square feet in area.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve? Approved by Mr. DeJean, second by Mrs. Snyder. Discussion. This request had originally come to planning in August of 2015, and an agreement with the applicant and the city has been made, and the decision will be modified. Mr. Murphy, anything to add?
Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit. Originally, the property owner requested a directional sign at the rear access area. The Planning Commission denied that request. Council originally upheld that denial, and the property owner then appealed to Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court pursuant to Chapter 2506 of the Ohio Revised Code. That litigation has proceeded through the court system, and we have determined to settle that litigation along the lines that have been authorized by council. It is called a directional sign. The sign face will not exceed 6 square feet, and the property owner can put the building address or the names of the tenants or the arrows, whatever copy they want on the sign within limits, of course. But the question was the names of the tenants and the address of the property, and either one can be placed on there. So this modification of the planning commission would carry out that proposed settlement.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Murphy? Okay, seeing none, can I please have a roll call?
Mrs. Finney,
Abstain, personal relationship with owner of property.
Mrs. Sabetta,
I would like an explanation on voting yes and no.
Okay, one thing I forgot to add too is that pursuant to the codified ordinances, you need a super majority of 5 votes in order to modify the building or the planning commission's determination. So by voting yes, then you will be voting in favor of the motion to modify the decision of the planning commission by allowing the 6 square foot sign at the rear access part on the Sharona property. If you vote no, then you are voting not to modify the decision of the planning commission.
This needs to be tabled then, because there's only 7 people, one's missing, and I can't vote.
Still 5.
Okay.
We could do 5 out of 5.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. John,
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio.
Yes. By a vote of 5-0, that motion has been carried. Next on the agenda is new business. Is there any new business from any member of council? Okay, seeing none, any additional comments from any member of council? Okay.
Nice short meeting, thank you so much.
Since there's no further business, do I have a motion to adjourn? Approved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mrs. Finney. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are adjourned.